Hi, David Taylor, Mr Pelargonium, back with another video. Welcome back to the channel. I know I've not done much lately, but there's loads and loads to do, so let's have a look. Hi, well, welcome back to the channel. I first of all, of course, have just got to say apologies for not doing any sort of fresh content over about the last 3 weeks. It's all down primarily to having to work on the virtual show. You'll have seen the fruits of that in the previous video, which is the all of the exhibits that we had a fair number of exhibitors put in. I think it was a great show, a few of mine, of course, as I expected, and it was a really good show. And I think Tom Kirkland from Scotland put in a fantastic Regal, which won the actual Best in Show award. A really, really good plant, so congratulations to Tom. This mid-season period is always chronically busy. And I have got so many different things to do. I can only really go through them one at a time. Now, I have been doing a lot of other things as well. I've been doing filming of various bits and pieces. I did mention I've still got an outstanding video to do about potting on this huge grey standard here, which I have yet to do. We'll do a separate video on standards, I think, which I'll include in that, the potting up of that plant. Because there is so much going on with standards. I've actually just pulled out a small one here in a 4-inch pot that I need to pot on, but I will do that in a separate video. All of the young standards that I've got are getting really, really big and tall now. You know, they will get to a stage where I have to say, okay, that's as high as I want them to go, and I'll develop their heads. Today, I'm going to concentrate on Regals, I think. We'll have a look at Regals today. Regals, of course, in this midsummer season, tend to sort of drop their flowers. There's a lot of sweeping up to do. I've been going round cleaning up constantly from the blooms that have dropped from my Regals. I have been doing a bit of breeding as well. We got lots and lots of beaks forming. Again, I'll do a separate video on that. You know, I have been filming. The problem is the processing, and that's what takes the time. But today, as I said, let's have a look at some Regals. Now, what I generally do in my Regals, I'll pick up one here. This is quite dry, very dry, in fact. I tend, after the initial flowering period, to give mine a little bit of a cutback. I only take them back by about a third. Because then what you often happen, you'll get a second flush of bloom in the late summer or early autumn. And at that point, I will then cut out all of the bloom stems, give it a little bit of a trim, not too much, and then repot it. And that's, as I say, about late August, early September. But I like to get another flush of bloom out of them, really, to enjoy in the greenhouse. Now, this is one of my own seedlings. It's very similar to a plant called Farum, which was bred by the good southern hybridizer Bert Pearce, and it did very well in the shows over a number of years. Not quite so fashionable these days to see on the show bench. But this bloom is very, very similar, if not almost identical. So it's probably unlikely to be released as a separate plant. But I think it does quite well. I mean, talking of the shows, really, my Regals really in the show weren't brilliant. Everybody knows I had a few issues with my Regals. They were very late in blooming. I did have 2 or 3, which you can see there. A plant of Saturn and a plant of Lilac Elaine, if you just look in the previous video, that were pretty decent. They weren't bad at all. Didn't come up to the brilliant standard that Tom Kirkland's plant of Jeanette did. But you know, they came on perhaps more than I expected in the end. But the majority of them flowered very late, including this one that I've pulled up here. And I'm just going to clip this back now, so we'll just maybe have a look at myself doing that. But at the end of the day, I'm really just taking out the flowering branches, and they will then grow back and give me a nice second flush of bloom just in the late summer. Right there, I've just homed in on that now. As I said, there's a lot of sort of dying leaves, few dead stems. This doesn't have to be an exact science, but what it will do, it will enable the plant to bush out a bit more. All these yellow leaves need to be taken off. Now I have actually, with the yellowing of the leaves, you do often see mealybug. I've actually opened this pot and looked in it, and it's as clean as a whistle. So there are no problems at all with mealybug in this plant. It is purely down to the fact that I've let it really dry out. So I've got no concerns about mealybug with this plant, because having mealybug does sometimes yellow the plant, particularly if you're continuing to water it. Just going to stop that there. It's up to you how you go about it. You can go a bit deeper on some branches, but you can look to balance your plant off. This plant is pretty balanced anyway, so there's not a great deal that I need to do to it. But as I say, if you're in the UK, what you often find is that the Regals give a really powerful first blush up to around about the middle end of June. And then if you cut them back like this, you'll get a brilliant second flush later in the summer, early autumn, when the light just starts to drop a bit, because of course Regals don't really like monumental heat. And they will just, continue to grow. You will get blooms, but they won't come in a big, powerful push like they do in the early summer. Say in the late summer, after it's had another bit of a flush of bloom, I will then cut this back similar to what I'm doing now. I may go a bit deeper. And I will repot it. It will be repotted quite extensively, but it will then go into the same size pot. Occasionally I may go to a smaller pot if I really need to depot it. Now I've got a lot of these to do, hence the reason why some of my other Regals here are looking a little bit on the sad side. It's because I've let them dry out. But they won't come to any harm as long as they're not bone dry. And it gives you the chance to give the plant a little bit of a clean up as well. Because one of the problems that we have had in the 3 weeks since the last proper video that I did, we've actually had a lot of sort of quite damp, humid weather. The weather has changed quite considerably. You may remember that we had a very dry spell in the first 2 to 3 weeks of June. It was very, very dry, very, very warm. But now it's turned very changeable certainly over the last 2 weeks. It's turned very changeable, very wet almost, very humid. It's been woeful for blooms. We've lost a lot of blooms actually because of that weather, which has not helped the Regals, because of course single flowering blooms of both zonal and Regal, they really succumb to damp weather. And there we are. That's fairly tidy job. Too high. I've got one here that's just sticking up, so That's just about level now. It's relatively flat, has grown sort of quite well, what I would call podgy. It's gone flat, but there's plenty of time at this time of year for the plants to, to develop some size. Lots of breaks down below, get rid of some of these dead and dying leaves. And we're just about there. There's a few stipules which I'll take out in a moment after the video. And that's what I'm doing. I will do this to all of my Regals now, and they will grow back. I can see in here, hopefully I might be able to home in on this, but there are a lot of inner breaks, loads and loads of them on all of these stems that are all ready to break through and give this plant a new lease of life. Loads and loads of them. May be able to see one or two here. There's one there. There's two on that side. Two on that one. We've got loads coming through. That's the thing with Regals. I mean, I've known exhibitors use Regals that are like 8 to 10 years old. Even older than that on occasion as well. And, you can get brilliant plants off them. If we look here, just I'll try and home in on that. There's a lovely fresh break just coming there. Look, that's a dead stipule. And that one there, hopefully I'll be able to home in on that. That's a superb break there. Grow up into the middle. And that's the sort of thing that we're trying to get to grow on. I'll give it a day or two to heal. And then give it a little drop of feedy water. Now, one thing with feed, I have gone over to using a different feed. This is a seaweed extract feed. It just gives the plants a little bit of a change through the summer period when you're sort of wanting to keep your plants growing, but really wanting to give them something a little bit different. And yeah, I've been using seaweed extract. There are a number of types of them, so I won't sort of promote any particular one, but that's what I'm doing. Full strength every watering as recommended on the bottle, but seaweed extract is really good, and as I said, it gives your plants a little bit of a change of food and a change of just to enable their roots to have a different feel to the type of feed that they're getting. Now, don't cast your sight over to some of my really big plants that I've got growing over there, because my bicolour Mr Wren, that needs a complete clean. I've got loads of blooms that have all sort of gone over, loads of new ones coming on top, but that needs a good clean up. Now, you may remember last year I did sow about 4 or 5 seedlings, mostly crossed with Gosbrook Susanna, of Robin Louise. I've still got, this is the original Robin Louise. This was in the show. The blooming was a bit sporadic, so I wasn't expecting any great shakes from it. But a pale sort of lavenderish pink. One of the seeds has flowered, and as you may find on some, it's absolutely identical. This is what happens occasionally with any seedlings you get. The plant is virtually identical. It's got a central bronze sort of medallion and a lavender pink bloom. You could not tell the two apart. So there we are. The leaf is virtually identical as well. The freshest bloom on it is probably that one, and there literally is absolutely no difference. So that will just either be put in a pot and put outside, and that'll be dumped at the end of the summer. But that's the way it goes. I've got another one that is just about to come into bloom. It's just begun to open. I can't really tell what the colouring of that one's going to be. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. What else is going on? A lot of interest in this. This was in the show. This is in a huge 12-inch, 10-inch. It says 27, but so that whether that's 27 centimetres, which is, well, what, an inch short of a foot, rather odd size. But This has done very well. It's a gold leaf formosum. I've been trying this for Steve Pollard. And Steve wanted to get over that he really didn't want to emphasise the fact that he was the judge and give it any bias. But it has done very well, this has. One side has sort of gone over, the rest of it is going as well. But he did give this first place in the hanging sort of pot or basket. One or two of the blooms are just going over a bit now, but it grows exceptionally strongly. I know Fibrex have got this, so it may be available for sale at some point. It's not yet named, not that I'm aware of anyway, but it grows so easily. I've watered it, I've kept it dry, I've kept it overwatered, doesn't bat an eyelid. And even during the winter, you may remember a lot of stellas and formosums can really hate winter, but this one came through, one or two slightly reddening leaves, which it shows through on the bronze zoning that it's got. But yeah, I've been very pleased with this. Continues to bloom, there's lots of new bloom coming through on it. I keep deadheading it, I can't almost keep up with it really. But an exceptional plant, and I'm sure that this one may well get released at some point by Fibrex Nursery. Really is superb. Now, as I say, one of the main challenges has been potting on and growing on all of these standards. I've got a huge, great thing growing up here. This, I really do want to get, oh, here comes a storm. I really do want to get some bloom from this before certainly well before the end of the season. Got to make a decision about when I take this up. This was only potted in early June, so it's been in here exactly a month. Filming this on the 6th of July. This was potted on the 5th of June. Needs a bigger stick, needs a main stem stick going through on it now, a metre long one. But I want, because the bloom on this, the single bloom on this, I think is one of the best single blooms I've seen on a zonal for a long, long time. Very unusual, very pretty. But I will need to get this up. I'll probably wait another month or so, get this into a big clay pot, because the problem is, of course, with big standards is that they get top heavy. You always have to remember that when potting on. And getting them into big pots, because you really do need to get them bottom heavy to counteract that heavy weight at the top. But as I say, I'll do a video more specifically about standards coming up in the next week or two. Now, something that I was actually going to mention was just a couple of favourites that have stood out for me. One that always really does the realms is Parisienne. I'm growing this as a very short level standard. Most Regal lovers really like this plant. Very unique colouring, this sort of lavender colour with a little purple upper feather on it. With a lovely, bright, vibrant white centre throat. And zonal, we won't leave the zonals alone. Birdbush Eleanor, again, I'm growing this as a bit of a lengthy, sort of short standard. Birdbush Eleanor, now the Birdbush series of plants were bred by a chap called Brian White, who did all he used to own Barnfield Pelargoniums, and he did all the scented varieties, but he did the odd zonal, and I presume this was one of them. But what I particularly like about this is it really does stand out, this vibrant spots and splashes. I actually quite like them. There are a number of growers that don't, but the heads on this are absolutely huge. And I think it really does stand out. It's got quite a nice little zone to the leaf as well. But that's another plant that's really struck me this year. Got hold of it at Fibrex Nursery. And I like it. When the blooms are fresh, the white is very vibrant and the orange is very vibrant as well. And I particularly like this one. So there's a couple of plants just taken hold of me this season, and I thought I'd give them a mention just to bring a bit of colour into the video. Okay, so that's just about it from me today. I've got a fair number of videos sort of lined up, and I'll be back hopefully very, very soon.